Welcome to my channel. My name is Lisa Alastuey, and on this channel, you will find a variety of inspirational and informational videos. So if that sounds good to you and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Today, I'm fortunate to have a bodybuilding veteran. His name is Larry Pollock. He has been in the bodybuilding world for 45 years, and so he has an extensive experience in the background of bodybuilding. He is also the owner of the Underground Performance Gym located in Ventura, California. And he is a podcast host of the Larry Pollock Uncensored YouTube channel. Welcome, Larry.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. I really enjoy your take on bodybuilding because it can be hard to find uncensored information a lot of times on what's happening. And I love that you kind of shoot from the hip and you tell it like it is. And I think your uncensored YouTube channel is going to take off. If you guys haven't checked it out, I'm going to put the link down in the description box. He's got some really good videos on there.
Well, I try to be as real as possible.
Yes. And it comes through. It definitely comes through. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about what does it take to become an Olympian champion? We know that there is a cost to pay. There's a lot of risks to take on your way to being an Olympian champion. So, for example, Samson Dauda, and he is $600,000 richer. So we know with a lot of risks, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. And he definitely was rewarded handsomely. But as we know, there's a lot of cost to this. So if you were to hypothetically wonder, like, what it takes to be a Samson, what would you say that includes?
Well, number one, you have genetic components. And to be at the elite level, you have to have elite genetics. And when I was young, starting out in this sport, I was of the belief that, you could overcome your genetics by, just training harder and whatever, outworking the other person. And there's some truth to that. But the reality is at the level, elite level it is now, if you don't have the genetics, you're not going to make it. It doesn't mean you're not going to be a good bodybuilder or you can't compete on some kind of level. But unless you have elite genetics, and I've watched different people over the years. And again, you have to have elite genetics to even start to approach that. That being said, there's been people with elite genetics that really didn't perform well and didn't go anywhere with their careers because they didn't have the work ethic, they didn't have the mentality to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So Victor Richards comes to mind. When I was growing up, he was the biggest guy in the gym, like bigger than all the pro bodybuilders, including Lee Haney, and good structure and everything. But he's mentality wise didn't have it. He didn't have the mental fortitude to take advantage of what God had given him.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, how does somebody know what their genetic potential is? Because you don't know that until you actually try. In other words, genetic potential does not necessarily mean that you started out a certain size or weight or whatever. For example, I started out, well, I was only 13 years old, but I was 100, maybe 110, 120 pounds. And I would have thought my genetics were pretty subpar, considering, how small I was, but I also was very young.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I started lifting weights, my body responded very quickly. So I put on a lot of size. By the time I was 16, I was able to win my first show. And by the time I was 18, I won the USA.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I had an Olympia level genetics, but I had good genetics. Like I could put on muscle as long as I worked hard in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So assuming that someone has decent genetics, then you have the work ethic. And I think that's super important. And that's probably missing in most people in everything in life, not just bodybuilding, but especially in bodybuilding. I mean, you have to be disciplined to be consistent with your training, be consistent with your diet, and to stay with it for a long time.
Mhm.
I mean, to become an Olympia level competitor, you're looking at a minimum of 10 years
Wow.
of competing, a minimum of 10 years.
What about an Andrew Jack?
So again, he's a freak of, but he's been training for a long time. He just hasn't been competing that long.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not like he just lifted weights yesterday.
Mhm.
He's new on the bodybuilding scene as far as competitive bodybuilding, but he was lifting weights for years. And he was already a big guy when we first saw him.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like he just started lifting weights.
Mhm.
He's only been competing on a bodybuilding capacity for like what, about 4 or 5 years now.
Yep.
Um, and he's extreme. He's a probably an example of extreme level of genetics, where he's just a genetic freak. So he's one in 100 million
Mhm.
that have that. At the same time, he has been working hard for the last 5 years since he's been in this. Um, so yeah, there's outliers, of course. Like I said, Victor Richards, he was 19 years old. He was already the biggest guy in World Gym and Gold's Gym in Venice. He was he's like maybe has a myostatin deficiency or something like that.
Mhm.
The guy didn't even work very hard, and he just grew. So there's people like that.
Hyper responders, is that the term?
Yeah, they're hyper responders, and they can be hyper responders to training, hyper responders to drugs, hyper responders to they just put on muscle easily.
Mhm.
Where the rest of the population, it's not so easy.
Right. So you have the genetics, you have the work ethic and discipline.
Well,
Um,
hold on. Very few people with the genetics have the work ethic.
hmm.
Usually you don't get both. You have great genetics and a poor work ethic, or crappy genetics and a really good work ethic.
But
But
on the
very
Olympia
rarely,
stage, but if you're on the Olympia stage, those guys have the work ethic and the genetics.
not all of them.
Okay.
Paul Dillette was on Olympia stage, and that guy didn't have a great work ethic. He didn't train
Okay.
hard, but he
Okay.
still had his genetics were good enough that he still made it to Olympia stage.
Okay.
So, but for the most part, yes, you need to have both.
Yes, yes. And so another part of that equation is the PED. So can we hypothetically talk about what Olympians are taking? We don't know, obviously, we don't have their drug protocol, but for like somebody in the audience that's like interested on what it takes to be an Olympian, what are some of the stuff that they are taking in it and like how much?
Well, I mean, we could spend hours talking about every single compound that there is. I mean, you have anabolic steroids, you have growth hormone, you have insulin, you have diuretics, you have thyroid. There's never mind all the natural supplements, fish
Mhm.
oil and curcumin and tuca for your liver, and there's a million compounds and things that go into it.
Mhm.
But for the most part, um, this is a kind of a debate that a lot of people think that to be on Olympia level, you have to take massive amounts of drugs. And I'm not saying that there aren't Olympians that didn't take massive amounts of drugs. There definitely are. But assuming somebody has elite level genetics and the work ethic, they're probably taking what I would consider a mid-range amount of drugs. What I mean by that is um, a normal cycle for uh, I don't know, a TRT person would be a couple 100 milligrams of testosterone a week, and probably a cycle for a maybe an amateur or national level competitive bodybuilder would be up to 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams a week. And for an Olympia level competitor, you're looking at like maybe 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams a week.
Wow.
And then there are those people that go way overboard and go like into the 8 to 10 grams a week.
Wow.
So it's there's all different levels. And like I know a guy in my gym, he's a IFBB pro and he's going to compete this year. And I believe he can get to the Olympia stage. And he's not crazy with the drugs. He runs, probably about 1,600 milligrams a week, and maybe closer to the show, probably go up to 2,000,
Mm.
which is not nothing. It's a good amount of steroids,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not 10 grams either.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people get confused thinking, if some is good, more is better. And that's true to an extent, but there reaches a point of diminishing returns where more is not necessarily better. It's just more side effects.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're seeing right now in some of these competitors is they've been pushing the drug so hard for so long that their bodies are no longer responding.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not able to achieve the results even with the drugs. So there's a fine line between, how much is enough and how much is too much. And again, that you're talking about people that this is their career, this is their whole life,
Mm-hmm.
and they're putting their life on the line literally to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Joe average person it's not going to look like Ronnie Coleman no matter what they take.
Right.
They can take as much drugs as they want. They can train as hard as they want, and they're never going to get that way because there was only one Ronnie Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think a lot of people get confused. They think, well, if Ronnie did this, and if I just eat the same way and train the same way and take this much drugs, I'll look like Ronnie. Well, no, not necessarily. Probably not.
Right. Right. So people are speculating with Nick Walker, who is, been in the top elite among professional bodybuilders the last few years, that he said that his body wasn't responding to the PEDs and he had to drop out 1 week before the Olympia. Let me just pull up a picture there. So if his body's not responding this time, can his body still respond later on? Or how does this play out, you think?
So here's the situation with him, and this is my take on it. And I did a video on it. I think you probably saw that. When they say his body's not responding, what I think they really mean is he's become insulin resistant. And what that means is bodybuilders not only take steroids, but they take growth hormone and insulin in sometimes large dosages over long periods of time while pushing massive amounts of food to attain this massive size. Well, eventually your body will start fighting back and you become insulin resistant, which means the cells are no longer receptive to insulin, and so you can't absorb nutrients. When you're not absorbing nutrients, all that food you're eating is not getting absorbed and utilized, and then basically you start it's becoming undigested food sitting in your intestine, which creates gas, and that leads to what we call the palumboism or bubble gut or whatever you want to call it. But basically their stomach's distended. That's a problem he had in the New York Pro. His stomach was distended. So even though he was massive and his conditioning was okay, he had a distended stomach, and that's just not going to fly on Olympia stage. And I believe that's the reason he pulled out, because he knew going into the Olympia, if he came in with a distended stomach, and you had guys like Martin Fitzwater and Derek Lunsford and Hadi Chupin with small waists, he was not going to stack up well against them.
Okay. You think his comeback is coming?
I can't, it's hard to say because it's possible that he can get this under control. But it's a process. It took years for him to develop that condition, and
Mhm.
it's going to take maybe years for him to unwind it.
Mhm.
It's not something you're going to do in a few weeks or a few months. So it's going to take time
Mhm.
for him to, and the only way to do that really is to basically get off all the drugs, or most of them anyways, and not eat so much food. And in the process, he's going to downsize and lose muscle, because all that food and drugs is what's supporting that amount of muscle.
Mhm.
So if he stops doing all that, he's gonna downsize significantly. But he might have to do that for a while. And when I say a while, that could be several months or longer,
Mhm.
uh, for his body to become insulin sensitive again. And that's if it can become insulin sensitive again, because somebody can push themselves to a point where they become a type 2 diabetic,
Mhm.
and then they're stuck in that situation,
Right.
where they're just insulin resistant, and it may never come back.
Right.
And we've seen over the years it's happened with lots of people. It happened with Dorian Yates, it happened with Ronnie Coleman, it happened with Jay Cutler, it happened with Phil Heath. That's why he didn't win his last Mr. Olympia, when he was going for number 8. Um, so the only person I've seen actually come back from this was Rolly Winkler. He had the distended stomach, and he was able to reel it in. He used a waist trainer and did a lot of ab work, and whatever he did, he was able to bring it back in, but he only competed for maybe a year after that, and then he retired. So
Time will tell and see how it plays out with Nick. He's young, so he's got that on his side, and he's definitely a determined individual. So um, I hope I hope to see him again on the Olympia stage.
I imagine you will. Whether he is competitive or not, that's the question.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, because his whole thing was kind of went down with the coach. He fired his coach recently, and that is something that Olympians, when you're at that level, you're going to have to pay a lot out of pocket for good coaching. What is a typical Olympian, like a Samson, like a Nick Walker, paying out of pocket for their coaching?
That varies just depending on what arrangement the coach has with the competitor.
Yeah.
There's actually situations where some of these coaches are paying the competitor to be their client.
Really?
Yeah, that
Like
happens.
who? Do you
I
know? Can you
can't
say
say who,
names?
but like I know somebody who's an IFBB pro, and they don't pay their coach. Their coach just does it for free because they want that person name under their roster,
Yeah.
as that's their show person. Look what I produced,
Hmm.
so they can get other clients that do pay.
Okay.
So I mean, I know someone's working with one of the top level coaches that's been around for a long time. She's a female IFBB pro, and I think she's paying him like $7,000 a year
Okay.
just for coaching.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, it all depends on whatever the coach has worked out with that person.
Yeah.
That could vary all over the place.
I would imagine at that elite level, it gets very competitive, whether you are going to work contractually with an Acito or um, Milo. Yeah.
Milos,
Milos. Yeah. I'm just wondering what their going rates are.
um, Chris claims to have the same rates for everybody, but I don't know. I mean, who knows? But
It's
I would imagine,
negotiable, I guess, huh?
I would imagine it's probably $5,000 to $10,000 a year.
Okay. Okay. So that's interesting to note. I know for like, maybe amateurs and lower levels, maybe it's just hundreds of dollars out of pocket
No,
for coaching.
no, no
No?
high level coaches working with amateurs. First of
Oh,
all, these high level coaches, one thing I want to say, and I said it recently in a video, um, just because someone's a high level coach, what I mean by that is, they have a lot of notoriety. doesn't necessarily mean they're the best coach, as
Hmm.
we just saw with the Matt Jansen thing.
Right.
They just handpick their clients. So you can be a coach because you're able to develop clients, or you can be a coach because you're able to lure in these high level elite genetic pros to being your client, like Jansen did. And according to a lot of people, Jansen supplied them with drugs and even paid them and did everything to get them to be their client.
Mm.
Um, so, that built his reputation as a coach. But really, like, I mean, take a Phil Heath, for example. Um, is Haney Rombot a good coach? Yeah, he is a good coach. But could 100 other coaches that are good train a Phil Heath? Yeah, because he's the genetic elite. I mean, almost, if you do
Yeah.
things halfway right with him, he's still going to be great.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, so a lot of, not necessarily, these high level coaches with a big name are not necessarily the best coaches. They just happen to have the best clients. Now, I'm not saying I think Aceto is great. I think Haney Rombot's pretty good. I think some of the other high level coaches are pretty reckless with what they do and
Reckless in what way?
just pushing things to a limit that's not necessarily necessary. Too much drugs, too much diuretics, too much everything.
Hmm.
Um, they maybe they think it's necessary, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't think someone has to push themselves to the brink of death to be successful on a competitive bodybuilding stage.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, a lot of these athletes at the Olympic level are putting their life basically in the hands of that coach. If they haven't done the homework or done the, understanding of how the drugs work or what it takes, to grow bigger, they're very trusting and vulnerable in a lot of times.
well, I'm gonna say that that's true, but I kind of blame the athlete too.
Okay.
If you're dumb enough to, you know, not do your own homework, you shouldn't be an elite level bodybuilder. If some coach told me take 10 grams of steroids and 30 units of growth hormone and a boatload of diuretics,
Hmm.
I'm not going to do that.
Hmm.
I don't care who's telling me that. I'm just not going to do that because I want to live.
Hmm.
And anybody at that level should at least have a pretty good understanding. I understand amateurs getting in, they don't know what they're doing. They're totally depending on a coach. But at that level, you should have a pretty good understanding of the coach should be a second set of eyes. They're not just do what I say. Now I do know some of these top coaches that tell competitors, do what I say and don't ask questions.
Mm.
And I know some competitors that follow that advice.
Hmm.
I wouldn't follow that advice. And
Hmm.
with my training clients, I want them to understand the process and what we're doing, and I explain why we're doing what we're doing, so I can get good feedback from them.
Hmm.
And but I'm also not the person to go to if you want to take 10 grams of gear and do this. And some athletes, sometimes the coach doesn't even want someone to take that much, and the athlete wants to push harder because they want to do that,
Yeah.
even though it's not necessarily necessary.
Hmm. Yep. It's interesting the times that we're living in and how some of the relationships of coaches and their clients are playing out online, where everybody is kind of privy to the conversation now, which would maybe in the past, these conversations would be private and they would not be for public consumption. And now it adds to a lot of the bodybuilding news, bodybuilding drama, where we get to find out, what this coach said, what this client said. We saw it with, Samson and Milos, but obviously we'll never get the full story because we weren't there. Only they know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, back in the day when I started, there wasn't really coaches, not formally anyways. There
Right.
there was no certification. There was no trainer certification, even on a low level. I prepped my first client. I was just a teenage bodybuilder that won some shows, And an older guy came to me and asked me, "Can you help me get ready for a show?" So I
Mhm.
did.
Mhm.
And we worked something out, and basically I helped him get ready for the show, and he did fairly well. And looking back, I did that with limited knowledge of what I had back then in the day
Mhm.
compared to now. Um, but like I can tell you, there's been two times in my life when I worked with a coach, like actually like paid them and did what they said.
Mhm.
And my first one was Mike Sable when I was very young. He prepped me for my first show, and I did win. Um, but looking back on it, I mean, I guess for the times what he told me was right, but it's we wouldn't do those things today.
Mhm.
Um, Another time I worked with Master Nasser Somebody, and he destroyed me in like 6 weeks. I went from 230 pounds ready to get on stage to light heavyweight in 6 weeks. He just overtrained me, over dieted me, over cardioed me, over everything me. Too much drugs, too much everything, and my body just didn't respond to that, and I just lost a ton of muscle.
Mhm.
So even though, and I listened to him because he's a top Olympian competitor,
Mhm.
but obviously, he he didn't understand my body or what, my type of metabolism was completely opposite to his.
Right. Right.
So if someone's a great competitor, that doesn't mean they're a good coach,
Mhm.
because what they think is, and a lot of these coaches are stuck on whatever they did back in the day, they're going to do that with everybody else. They use
Right.
the same cookie cutter diet and training program that they did for every single other person. Even though the other person might be completely different metabolism, completely different level,
Mhm.
they just do the same thing for everybody.
Mhm.
So they may have a big name, but that doesn't mean they're a good coach.
Mhm.
So really, to be a good coach, you need to have a really good understanding of chemistry and nutrition and training and all of these things, and then being able to apply that to different people and see how their body responds to different things and
Mhm.
make adjustments. And that's where Matt Jensen fell short, because he wasn't able to make those adjustments when things weren't going right,
Mm.
or he just wasn't paying attention. And this is another thing that people run into with these high level coaches. I said it just recently on a podcast. I think the most clients I could take on as far as prep at a time would be 20, because it's just a lot of work that goes into
Right. Is
prepping
it?
somebody for a show, just time wise.
Mhm.
The amount of time I have to spend, just looking over their diet and seeing what they're doing. And as we get closer to the show, it gets more and more and
Mhm.
more. And there's no way I could have hundreds of training clients.
Mhm.
And so if you have a coach that have hundreds of training clients, they're not really either A, not paying attention, or B, they're outsourcing that to somebody else.
Right.
So they're not the one that is actually doing the coaching.
Mhm.
Or you have these people that just literally copy and paste and give the same program to everybody. Here's
Yep.
your diet, here's your training. I've seen that too.
Yep. Yep. You know, what's interesting too on the Olympia stage in coaching is that when you have, let's say, the top 10 and they're sharing the same coach, and I know the bodybuilding world's small and maybe there's slim pickings for coaches at an elite level, but if I was going to be ranked in the top 10, I wouldn't want to share a coach. Maybe that's just me. What are your thoughts on that?
I can see that being a conflict, uh, but I know Aceto's done it. Honey Rambaud's obviously doing it with Derek Lunsford, Honey Shupin. So I guess it depends on, if you really trust that coach to be unbiased and, not try to put somebody before the others.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in general, I could see that being something in the back of your mind, being like, is he helping this guy more than me?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's only two people that I know that, well, no, Chad Nichols did that as well.
Matt Jensen, you had Nick Walker, you had Quentin
Yeah.
Beastwood.
Yeah, this is true. So Um, again, I guess if you have confidence in that coach that they're going to put you first and foremost and not be biased towards another athlete,
Hmm.
then I guess that can work. I know if I was doing it, I would not be biased towards one person over another. I want everybody to do the best they can. So I'm not going to like try to. I'm definitely not going to try to sabotage my training client.
Right. Right. And I don't think they are either. It's just, I don't know. I think there's a conflict of interest personally. That's my opinion.
Uh, I think it's like having a relationship, even any relationship in business
Hmm.
or personal, whatever. Do you trust the person or not?
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
but I'm not sharing my husband.
again, that's pretty personal.
Yes, true, true. Some people polyamory, I know they do. So yeah, okay. So let me ask you about another competitor and another very famous Olympian. Let me see if I can pull up real quick here. This is a recent post from CBum, and you could see there where he comments when you don't have to make weight, he's got some extra weight on there for his classic physique. And that's what's gotten people to wonder if he's maybe, I don't know, flirting with the idea of doing an open competition. What do you think?
Well, we don't know. He just retired at the Mr. Olympia.
Yeah,
He announced
retired
it.
classic physique, but that doesn't mean maybe he wouldn't step on a stage at some show and do a open competition.
No, I think he's done.
You think he's done?
Yeah. He said it in his speech. He wants to spend time with his family. He's concerned about his health. He just doesn't want to do this anymore. He's accomplished as much as he needs to. And honestly, I don't think going into the open would be of any benefit to him. Um, he'd have to put on a lot more size. I know he looks big in that picture, but standing next to an open guy, he would not look so big.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have to put on more size, which means he'd have to take more drugs, eat more food, and he already has an autoimmune disease.
A kidney issue.
Yeah, he doesn't want to push it anymore. And I don't blame him. He's already accomplished enough,
Mm-hmm.
and he has enough business and other things going on in his life that he doesn't need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He's established a legacy for himself. So
Mm-hmm.
I just think there's no point in him going continuing anymore. And to go into the open, he'd have to push his body to a whole nother level. So if he's not willing to continue in classic, why in the world would he do that?
Right, right. Speaking of his legacy, I like that there's conversation around raising the prize money for classic physique, and I've heard, maybe going to maybe contribute or work around trying to raise it, because you have the open guy that wins 600,000, you have the classic physique guy, they win like 60,000, I believe. That's a big
Yeah.
difference.
Well, I mean, classic is a newer division. I mean, it's very popular. It became popular very fast,
Hmm.
but it's still a newer division. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of people do classic because it's easier than open bodybuilding. And what I mean by easier is you don't have to put on as much muscle, so it doesn't take as long necessarily years wise to get to that level. I'm not saying that they don't work hard or anything like that. It's just that there's a lot more people. It's more attainable for most people than it is the open level.
And they don't
So
have to take as many PEDs, is that correct?
some of them probably do take the same amount of PEDs, but they're not they're not having to push the size, obviously, because there's a sorry, I'm getting over a cold. There's a height and weight restriction.
Right, right.
So they're not nearly this. If you put, they look amazing, and they are amazing, but they look amazing on stage next to each other. But put them in a lineup of open guys, and they disappear. You wouldn't even they'd look like a little tiny guy standing next to open guys.
So if I were to put Sebum next to um, Derek or Hottie, he couldn't hang.
No, no, he's He's probably weighing, about the same as them, and he's like 6 inches taller.
Okay, good point.
So,
Yeah.
size-wise, like, just the amount of muscle per square inch, he would look skinny next to them. I know he looks massive in this picture, but next to them, he would look small.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not saying small in stature, but small, like, just size-wise. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So let's touch on another thing that I think is a big requirement if you're going to be an Olympian and step on that stage, especially in today's time, is that you have to have a pretty strong, thick skin, considering all the social media. You also have to have fairly good mental health because you are dabbling with drugs that can affect some of your mental health. So can you share with me some of your thoughts on that?
Well, we live in the social media era, which has changed things dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, even to do what you and I do, you have to have sort of a thick skin. You know
You're
that
more so. You're way, way more popular than I am.
well, you know that little nonsense that just came out with the guy, what's his name? He just pushed the kid across the
Oh,
gym.
Jeff Nippard
Jeff
and
Nippert
Mike.
and Mike. Yeah.
Mhm,
Well, I mean, I made a video on that, and I kind of tried to stay neutral in the conversation.
mhm.
Um, because at the time I made the video, I just had one side of the story, and I knew there was probably more to the story than we were being told at the time, and of course, it came out that there is.
Yeah.
But I got a ton of like negative comments of people like defending Jeff Nippert and how dare that guy and this and that. And I'm not saying that the Mike guy was in the right, but the people have personally attacked me, and I really didn't have a horse in the race either way.
Mhm.
And I don't take it personally because, like I said, I just was commenting on the situation and our observation of the situation. I didn't say anybody was right or wrong,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
I
people
still got it's still it's crazy, how people get worked up, and
yeah, people
on
are
the
quick
street.
to like pick a team. You got to be on one side or the other without having like
Hmm.
all the information, all the nuance, all the context. Um, and there's always more to the story. And there's usually nobody's 100% innocent in these situations either, but people want to see it from black and white.
Yeah. So I don't want to get all deep into it, but I was I'm of the thought that, the whole thing was pretty pathetic, if you ask me. I
It's
mean,
unfortunate. It should have de-escalated. They both could have de-escalated it.
yeah, and to get blown out on this level where, so many people are enraged over the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a sign of the times because in the past nobody would have video or commenting or yeah.
No,
And
in
it's
the past, it would have just been over and done with in the gym, and they would have
yeah.
settled it, and then it wouldn't have been even a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure, for
Now
sure.
it's, all over the internet and
Ooh, it gets blown up.
uh-huh.
Yep. So let me
So
add, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
So what else do you think is required of an Olympian to be on that stage?
Well, obviously you have to have the mental fortitude to, be very regimented with your nutrition, your training, your
Hmm.
posing. You kind of have to put your whole life into bodybuilding and block everything else out.
Yep. And you have to have a
You
good
know?
support system. I would imagine, this is something you can't do alone. You need a team, not just a coach, but also family members and friends and maybe a therapist.
I disagree.
No? Okay. Tell me why you disagree.
It depends on the person. If you
Okay.
have those things, it's nice. But like for me personally, when I'm competing, I'd rather be by myself. I don't want somebody else in the way. I
Mm,
don't mind a significant other if they're helping, but I don't want them I don't want that distraction. I just want to focus on what I need to do. And I don't want the distraction of somebody else unless they're completely on board with what I'm doing and they're not,
supporting you.
trying to pull me in one direction or another direction.
Mhm.
I've had my best contest preps after a breakup
Why is
because,
that?
well, because now I can like put that relationship to the side and focus on just my training, and I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about somebody else's stuff,
Right, right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely. Bodybuilding is some would say is a selfish sport because you have to be so self-focused on your thing. So you would have to have a very understanding partner relationship, very supportive of what you're trying to accomplish, especially on this elite stage of the Olympia.
I've had it both ways, um, where I've had someone who was very supportive and they're helpful. But I've also done it on my own.
Hmm.
For me personally, I don't really need a cheerleader. Now I know, like, my ex-girlfriend, she really would need me to like, oh, you look great today. Oh, you're this or that. She needed this like
Positive
constant
reinforcement.
reinforcement from me, uh, to for her to do it.
Hmm.
Um, but I've always been self-motivated. And I think on an elite level, like Olympia stage, you got to be self-motivated. You can't depend on other people. Like I don't need someone else to push me in the gym.
Hmm.
If I have a training partner, great. If I don't, I can still train hard without that. Um, I don't need to be I don't need someone to keep me on my diet. I can do that
Hmm. I
myself.
think you're in the minority. When I'm looking at the top 10 on that stage, I don't know if they can say the same.
I don't think they'd be in the top 10 on the stage if they couldn't say the same. Now,
Okay.
maybe most people aren't like that, but I think those top 10 probably can do it.
They could do
Now,
it
I know
by
you have
themselves.
Samson with his wife, and she's completely supportive, and that's great. And I'm sure she helps him in some kind of way.
Hmm.
But guarantee you, when it comes time to him going into the gym, I think a fire alarm just went off in my house.
Uh-oh.
It's a battery thing.
Oh no.
Hopefully it turns off and the dog stops barking. Um, and the truth of the matter is, until somebody's an elite level, they're probably not making any money directly off of bodybuilding or very little. So
Right.
in the 10 years leading up to that, they're going to have some kind of income coming from somewhere,
Hmm.
because it costs money to do this.
Right, right. And so a lot of Olympians are sponsored. They're selling supplements. They're doing other side stuff to make money. But I would imagine that, they also to have some business acuity because people might want to take advantage of them if they're not careful.
Well, like I said, you need money, and like a lot of them don't get these supplement sponsorships until they've achieved a certain level of success. Martin Fitzwater and Samson Data were both working construction just not too long ago to pay it to just pay their bills.
Hmm.
They didn't have big sponsorships until more recently.
Hmm.
Martin just got hired, sponsored by Hostile, and he just picked up a couple other sponsorships, after he won his first pro show. But, he's been at this for a few years, and he had to work construction just to pay, just to survive while he
Hmm.
was doing this.
What kind of money do you think they're getting for those sponsorships?
Not as much as they did back in the day, I can tell you that. Back in the
Like,
day, you had Weeder contracts, and there was the magazines, and
right.
the guys were getting, 100, $200,000 a year. And
So they
that
might just be getting like a couple grand a month by being sponsored, like a
some
Martin.
of them are just getting some free supplements.
Wow. Okay.
The truth of the matter is these supplement companies are cheap.
Right.
They'll say you're a sponsored athlete. I'll give you, a few $100s of supplements every month, and post me on your Instagram as taking stuff.
Hmm.
And I think this is really the athlete's fault because too many people are willing to do that. So if I'm a supplement company owner and I have, 1,000 athletes willing to work for pennies, why I'm going to pay somebody a whole bunch of money and I don't need to, you know.
Mhm.
I've been offered small amounts of money for doing things, and I'm just like, no, I'm not s- uh, putting my name behind you for a few $100s.
Mhm.
It means nothing to me.
Mhm.
When I got into bodybuilding, most of the bodybuilders were broke. They were under Weider contract and they were getting, barely enough money to pay for a cheap apartment and a little bit of food. And they had to have a side job on the side just to make ends meet.
Mhm.
And so I never thought of making money off of bodybuilding directly, you know, just from competing.
Mhm.
I always had something else going on. I worked as a marketing manager for a number of years. I've owned a gym for now 15 years. You have to have some form of income.
Mhm. Yep, yep. So let me ask you about like Olympians and being able to voice their concerns or to have a say about things. I mean, like in other industries, you might have a union that, speaks for the employees, but with this, I know understand it's different. This is, a competition and they're, I guess, independent contractors in a sense. Um, what are your thoughts on you know, Olympians getting together and, for example, like Jay Cutler, he boycotted the Friday night of the Olympia because
Mhm.
of the prejudging coming on so late, and they haven't corrected that year after year. People complain, you're not getting the best Olympian. They're way past their peak at that time. Um, and so he boycotted Friday night. So I would assume if all the Olympians got together and boycotted, that maybe there would be a change to that policy.
I can tell you in all the years that I've been involved in this, there's been talks of it, but it's never happened.
Right.
Sean Ray tried to start something a long time ago. Lee Priest started to start something a long time ago. And the truth of the matter is the bodybuilders can't seem to get to aligned enough to do this.
Hmm.
So the IFBB kind of does what they want to do.
So if you had a Jay Cutler, and if everybody did what Jay Cutler did this last Friday Olympia, that would definitely get their attention.
Well, it did get their attention. They obviously made the adjustment because of what he did and other people complaining. Um, but I think that the organization has gotten better anyways. The judging is more fair to some extent.
Hmm.
There's not as much corruption, I think, as it was back in the day.
Hmm.
And overall, I think they are trying to do better by the athletes, at least on the professional level. I don't know about the amateur level.
Hmm.
Some of these promoters on the amateur level, it's a real shit show the
And
way they do it.
give me an example.
Oh, I took a competitor to nationals a couple of years ago, and we didn't go on stage till 1 o'clock in the morning,
Wow.
which was insane. And we were told to be back there at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we were sitting backstage, not knowing when we were going to be going on because there were so many competitors, and it was just such a
Mismanagement.
yeah, just no one knew what was going on. And I was there for my athlete backstage. I had bought a backstage pass, and so I could be back there. And I kept going to the expediters and like, who's next? What's trying to find out what's going on, and they didn't even know.
Hmm.
So, like I said, we got there 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He didn't go on till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Insane.
And by that time, you know, we had already carved up and lost it, and it's not right for
Hmm.
having somebody hang around backstage for 6, 7 hours.
Hmm.
Nowhere to, not even anywhere to sit. There was not even enough chairs for people to sit in. You had to like lay down on the floor or whatever.
Wow. It sounds like they didn't know really what they're doing. They just maybe put it together and
No, what they did is they just had way too many competitors, and over a couple day period of time, they had like thousands of competitors competing, and
yeah.
they're just trying to sort through them, and yeah, they weren't organized with it.
Mhm. Yep, yep. So is there anything else you can think of that maybe the average person doesn't know what it takes to be an Olympian, like, the top 10? Is there anything else that kind of stands out to you that we would need to know that it takes to be at that level?
Well, I don't think the average person has any clue about any of this. I mean, they don't even understand what to go through a single workout. They just can't comprehend the amount of effort that it
Yeah,
takes. They would just not, they would not even understand it at all,
yeah.
let alone the discipline and the nomadic lifestyle and everything that has to go into it. I don't think the average person could understand it.
It's a big sacrifice for sure.
It's a sacrifice, but also a will to do this that the average person just doesn't have,
Right,
you know.
right. It's a special wiring, I would say, that attracts an individual to a particular sport. In this case, bodybuilding. It requires like a different, I think, you know, a type of individual and their personality and interests and gifts that bring them to bodybuilding.
Well, not only that, it's just willing to devote yourself to something 100%. Most people are not willing to do that. I mean, look, what do most people do? They work at their job from 9 to 5 or whatever they do, and then they go home and they do whatever they do at home,
Yeah,
whether they go out with their friends or watch TV or whatever they do.
yeah,
They're not the average person is not even going to the gym. They're not even on a schedule of any kind. And those that do go to the gym, maybe they go do a mamby-pamby workout 2 or 3 days a week. It's a completely different mindset.
yeah, 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 definitely. The Olympians get their accolades from their fans that do understand that, do know the sacrifice and the work and the what they're having to put their body through. But yeah, you're right. The average person just looks at it maybe, erroneously, like, oh, I could be that big too if I just took drugs or whatever.
Yeah, that's what they think. I could sit on my couch and watch soap
Mhm.
operas and take a bunch of drugs and to look like that.
Right, right,
I
right.
remember when I was a teenager, when I started competing, I was at a family gathering and one of my aunts said, and of course, this is when weightlifting was kind of new. She's like, "Yeah, I wouldn't want to lift weights because I don't want big arms like Arnold Schwarzenegger."
Not
And even
happening.
even as a teenager, I'm like, "Yeah." She's like a 60-year-old woman. I'm like, "Yeah, you're not going to get big arms like Arnold Schwarzenegger, no matter how bad you want them."
Yep, yep. Awesome, awesome. um, so I know that you've been in the industry for 45 years and you have rubbed shoulders with a lot of people. They have crossed your path. So I thought it might be fun to do kind of a little word association game here. So if I give you a name, just like the first thing that pops into your head, as far as it could be just an adjective or it could be a one sentence. Um, because I know that you have a history and you have had experience with a lot of people. So I was wondering if we could do that. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Conniving,
conniving. Okay. Dorian Yates,
discipline,
Lee Haney,
I know Lee personally, so let me think. I think he's just all around good guy,
okay, Jay Cutler,
very smart businessman,
okay, Samson Dowda,
genetic freak,
okay, Nassar El Sambadi,
manipulative,
okay, Bill Heath,
really good guy,
okay, Sean Ray,
political.
okay, um, Bob Ciccarello,
Yeah, like, I mean, the douche.
okay, Dave Palumbo,
the word I'm looking for? Good intentions.
Okay. Frank Zane.
He was a master of classic.
Okay. Sebum.
Seems like a nice guy to me. That's about all.
Okay. Nick Walker.
Discipline.
Hottie.
Work ethic.
Okay. Derek.
Charismatic.
Charismatic. Okay. Oh, his name's escaping me. He was best friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the short guy.
Franco Colombo.
Yeah, Columbo.
Sidekick.
Sidekick. Ronnie Coleman.
The GOAT.
For sure, for sure. Andrew Jack.
Great genetics.
Martin Fitzwater.
Well balanced.
Balanced. Okay. Oh, Dexter Jackson.
Consistency.
Okay. Your favorite all-time bodybuilder?
Phil Heath.
Bill Heath. Okay. Who will be the next Olympian next year? Just a prediction.
That's really hard to say.
I know things can change, things
I
happen.
couldn't predict this one because the way it is in bodybuilding right now, it's like the judging criteria seems to flip flop every year.
Mm,
One year they go for more condition, the next year they're going for structure and shape. No
yep.
one saw Samson. No one had Samson winning this year.
I did, but I'm an aesthetics person. I like the aesthetics.
You know, it seemed like a lot of females did, but
Yeah,
but
I mean, I felt the momentum behind Samson. Like people would say, eventually, it'll be his time. Maybe
yeah, I thought maybe eventually, but I didn't see it coming this time. I
this
didn't think the
time.
conditioning was there. I still don't think the conditioning was there.
Yeah. Do you think it'll go down as one of the controversial Olympians?
It should. Brandon Curry got shit when he won in 2019 for not being, Olympia level conditioning.
Yeah. It'll be debated. I mean, it's probably getting harder and harder. I mean, people debated last year between Hottie and Derek,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting to try to understand the scorecards.
Well,
And
with Hottie and Derek, it was very close.
Mhm.
They both had their strengths and weaknesses.
Yep.
With Samson, it was like a completely different animal.
Right. I think they went with aesthetics and structure
Over conditioning.
over conditioning.
Now, the thing is the IFBB going to continue to go in that direction, or are they going to go back to conditioning?
Depends what he brings next year, right?
Not necessarily. It depends on what everybody else brings too,
Mm-hmm.
So,
But somebody like Hottie can't bring that height and the structure.
no, but if Hottie came in looking like he did at the Arnold Classic, he would have won.
Amazing. I know.
Yeah,
Yes.
he would have won. He just wasn't quite that.
Yes.
But
Yep.
Samson would not have beaten that version of Hottie. As it was, they were tied
From prejudging. Yeah.
at prejudging.
Mm-hmm.
And Hottie improved it in the night show, and Samson pretty much stayed the same. So how Samson ended up winning, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
That was just whatever the judges felt like they wanted to reward on the day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was necessarily someone beating someone. It was just they flipped a coin
Mm-hmm.
and decided this is the direction we want to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're trying to set a standard
Mm-hmm.
for less conditioning, more size and structure.
Mm-hmm.
I see that happening across the board.
Even at the Arnold next year, I wonder how that will play out.
Uh, Arnold tends to go for structure and aesthetics over conditioning as well. So it's really hard to say, but again, it all depends on who shows up looking like what.
Mm-hmm. Does
You know,
Arnold have a vote on the judging?
technically not, but come on, it's his show,
Mm-hmm.
and he picks who's the judges, and he's going to pick who's the head judge. So technically, he shouldn't, but reality is it's his show.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want judging to go in a certain kind of way, pick judges that have a certain point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Just politics,
Mm-hmm.
just like regular politics, if you put people in a certain position that have a certain belief system, then it's probably going to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how it goes and if they increase the prize money, because Arnold, you know, he likes to be competitive. I wonder if he'll even increase the Arnold more.
If not this year, he'll do it the following year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see it, bodybuilding is growing, like just the amount of people coming to the shows, the amount of fans that are, propping up. There's a lot of money that is being made. And so I can
Well, it's
definitely see.
crazy at the Olympia that, when I went, just a few years ago, having VIP tickets was a big deal.
Mhm.
Now it's like VIP tickets, you were standing room only. There was like so many,
Mhm.
like almost everybody had VIP tickets. I remember I went to the press conference and I got there before it started and there was standing room only. All the seats were already taken.
Yeah. Yeah. It's getting big. It's definitely getting big. And I know if you are in the Olympia business, get ready because it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's the internet is
Mhm.
it's growing because of the internet.
The opportunities are big and endless. And it's not only just like, and it's a trickle down effect, not just for the Olympians and the people that put on the shows, but then everybody else associated with it is making money off of it.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunity in now like there's never been. And again, it's because of the internet,
Mm-hmm.
because of social media and it's just global now. You have a bigger reach.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. Well, awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed talking about this because I've always been curious. I've been following bodybuilding for like the last 4 years, and I'm really curious to see all the kind of the inside talk about what it takes to become an Olympian. And so this was really insightful to talk with you today.
I'm just curious, what was your fascination with the whole bodybuilding thing?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So during COVID, this was like around 2020, I, home bored like everybody else and found myself on YouTube. And I was watching this YouTube channel, Valuetainment. And I saw an interview with Sean Ray. And it was really fascinating. He had some good stories. And after watching his video, he piqued my interest because I'm like, oh gosh, now I got to go watch this video on this Chad Nichols guy. And then I just went down the rabbit hole, saw the ones with, Ronnie Coleman and some of the other interviews that he had on that channel. And then I thought, wow, this is fascinating. There's so much more that goes on than just what's that 10 seconds on stage. And I decided to look into it more. And I just, had a fascination. And I ended up going to the Olympia the next year. And I met Sean Ray at the expo. And I told him, I go, you're the reason I am here because I saw your interview and I went down the rabbit hole and just been fascinated by this world.
So do you have aspirations to do any of this yourself?
Absolutely not. No, 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 no. I am more just a fan in the seat. I'm, just somebody that wants to learn more about it, hear more about it. I like the history of it, just those types of things. But no, I have no interest in competing.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's fascinating. It is a fascinating group. And I think it's cool that it's a niche and that it's not mainstream. I actually like that. And I don't know. It's an interesting world.
But it's interesting how it's attracted. I mean, once upon a time, it was like only people involved were the hardcore bodybuilders. It
Yeah.
was a very close knit, very
Oh,
quiet,
yeah.
kind of secretive community.
Yep. Oh, all my friends and family don't get why I like it or that I watch bodybuilding videos and keep up with the bodybuilding news. They don't get it, and that's okay. It's not for everyone.
No, I know, but it's interesting that a person
Yeah.
like you that's not a hardcore competitor is interested in it. And I think so many people are becoming interested just as fans.
hmm But I appreciate the hard work. I appreciate um they're taking calculated risks, hopefully, I appreciate people who push, their limits, their limitations and push through them. And then of course, who doesn't like a beautiful aesthetic body? That's also nice to look at.
Well, it's great having talked with you. And
Yes, yes. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate you coming on my channel. And again, you guys need to check out his YouTube. It's all uncensored. You're going to get a really good take. Larry is doesn't hold anything back. And like I said, when I'm scouring and going through stuff, you're definitely one of the channels I go to find out kind of like more to the story and the truth of it.
I appreciate that.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Larry. And if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit the bell to be alerted to when the next video drops. Thanks for watching.